Luke chapter 22. I appreciate the singing tonight. Been a blessing. I thank you ladies for singing. We've looked, honestly, a couple of times at Gethsemane, the last couple of services, even this morning, but I want to look at one little portion of that tonight. Begin reading in verse 45. And when he rose up from prayer and was come to his disciples, he found them sleeping for sorrow. And he said unto them, Why sleep ye? Rise and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. I've read these verses, I suppose, probably hundreds of times, I guess. Maybe that's an exaggeration. But I never have quite seen three words quite like I have in the last few days as I've been studying. It says in verse 45, he found them sleeping for sorrow. Those words jumped off the page as I was reading through, actually studying for this morning's message. What that's saying is at least part of the reason that they were asleep was because they were so stricken with emotion. They were exhausted because of the grief, the despair. Emotions, our physical man and our emotional man or our mental man are closely connected. And if we get down emotionally, it'll wear us down physically. And if we get down physically, it won't be long, we'll be down spiritually. And we find that these men were asleep. Now, this isn't the only reason, at least I'm convinced. But a part of the reason why they were sleeping was because they were so exhausted because of the grief, because of the despair, because of the burdens they were going through. If I could put it like this, the toil of life had overwhelmed them. And they got there in the garden and it was quiet, even though Jesus was praying, probably within earshot. And they were so worn out, they were so exhausted. And again, I still think there's other reasons. But they were, because of their sorrow, they were exhausted and they went to sleep. My question is this: why were they so sad? What was it that had overwhelmed them? What was it that had grieved them so? What was it about their lives? What experience had they gone through to where they had become exhausted to the point to where they fall asleep? Well, that's what I want to try to look at tonight. I want to try to preach a message entitled, Sleeping for Sorrow. Sleeping for sorrow. I believe one of the reasons why they were so emotionally exhausted was because they were confused. There was a lot of things going on they just did not understand. Look back in verse 35. Verse 35, notice what Jesus says before they get to the garden. And really on the way there, he's speaking, and notice what he says. And he said unto them, When I sent you without purse and scrip and shoes, lacked you anything? And they said, Nothing. He's reminding them of a time that he had sent them out with nothing. They didn't even, if we put it in our words, they didn't even carry their wallet with them. They left their cell phone at home. They went out with nothing. He said, don't take an extra coat. He says, I'll provide for you along the way. And he did. And he's reminding them about that. And he said, when I sent you out with nothing, did you lack for anything? And they said, no, we didn't. But notice the next verse. Then said he unto them, listen, but now, he's signifying there's a change. There's something different about to happen. But now, he that hath a purse, let him take it. And likewise his scrip, and he that hath no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. Now the sword here, I believe, is talking about for protection and not to start a fight. But he's showing here that there's some difference. There's a change coming. And I think that's one of the things these disciples are confused about. I've said that one of the reasons why they were exhausted mentally, one of the reasons they were sleeping for sorrow was because there were some things going on in their life. There were some things going on that they just couldn't understand. Things were different. Things were changing. And the Lord said there was a time, I sent you out with nothing, and I provided, and I took care of you. But now things are different. I want you to take your wallet with you. I want to make sure that you take your coat. I want to make sure that you take what you need. You take your script, and if you don't have a sword, sell your garment and buy one. I'm going to just interrupt myself right here. That tells me that they were not loaded. They were not rich. Some people today will tell you the disciples and Jesus had plenty of money. Well, he said, if you don't have a sword, the way you get one is sell one of your garments. If they'd had a big bankroll, they wouldn't have to sell anything to buy a sword. They'd just go buy one. But he's saying there's some things changing. There's some things that's going to be different. And his point is this. The time is drawing nigh that I'm going to be gone. I'm going to leave you. I've been walking with you and you've been walking with me. And we fellowship together and I've tried to teach you some things and you've learned a great deal. But I just want to forewarn you. I want to get you ready. It won't be long. I'm going to be gone. And where you had been able to trust me because I was here in the flesh, you're going to have to realize I'm not going to be here. I won't be here for you to talk with personally. I won't be here to see you face to face. Things are changing. There's things that's going to be different. And they've been pondering that. And they've been thinking about it because they've gotten used to him being there. They've got accustomed to being able to see him when they get up every morning. They've gotten used to him, and to be honest, they've gotten to where they take it for granted, I believe. I mean, they just got to the point to where they thought, well, if there's a need, he's here to take care of it. And if there's a problem, he's here. He'll handle it. And if there's a decision to make, all we got to do is turn to him and ask him. But now he's saying, the time is drawing nigh. I won't be here. I won't be here in the flesh. You won't be able to turn to me and ask me for help. I won't be here to provide and take care of you. And all these things are confusing them, for they think he's the Messiah. They still don't understand the crucifixion. Even at this point, they still do not realize the necessity of the cross. They still think he's the Messiah. They still think he's coming to deliver them from Roman oppression. And now he's talking about leaving. Now he's talking about things changing, and it's confusing them. They just can't reason it out. They just can't get it worked out in their mind. And one day he does leave, but they're struggling with this. They're confused about what he's doing. And friend, the same kind of thing can happen to us. God can send us through things we don't understand. God will allow circumstances to come in our life, And if we were honest, we'd have to say there's been times when we said, God, what are you doing? I do not understand. I am confused. I just don't understand why you're doing it this way. They were burdened. They were saddened. They were grieving. And it was overwhelming them. They were saddened toward sorrow, and it made them so weary they went to sleep. One of the reasons was because they were confused, because things were different. Things were changing. They had gotten used to things the way they were. And I'm afraid we do the same thing. I'm afraid we get used to things being familiar and normal and regular. And that's one of the dangers of the Christian life, getting used to things and things becoming familiar. The same Sunday morning, the same Sunday night, the same Wednesday night, the same songs, the same music, the same preacher, the same bunch, the same existence, the same service. We get used to the familiar. And that's what they had gotten used to. They had gotten comfortable. He's right here. If we ever need him, we just turn to him. But things were changing, and they could not understand it. It was overwhelming them. They were confused because things were different. Their circumstances were different. Their circumstances were difficult. Not only were things changing, but in their eyes, from their viewpoint, they were changing to the negative. And that's my opinion. Things were getting worse. Things were getting bad. They had had him to count on. They had had him to turn to. And even though there had been problems along the way for the 3 or so years they had walked with him, it had been nothing to what they're about to face. They're all heading toward Calvary. They're heading toward the arrest and the attack of the devil and all that's going to happen. Their circumstances are not only different, but they're difficult. Look in verse 39. And he came out and went as he was wont to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples also followed him. The words, he was wont, means it's like he usually did. It's telling us that this was a regular habit. It's telling us that they had come to this place many times before. This garden they entered that we call Gethsemane. It was a beautiful place. It was a quiet and peaceful place. Many times before they had come there just to rest and relax. Many times they had come and just sat down and just had a good conversation, just enjoyed each other's fellowship and company. But something's different this time. When they come this time, they see it in his face. They see the distress. They see the anguish. And they wonder what's happening. What's different? What's he thinking about? What's making him so overwhelmed? What's troubling him? It's the same place, but now it's different. Things are growing worse. Something's happening. His countenance is not a countenance of peace and contentment like before, the other times that they came to this garden. But now he's clearly distressed and he's burdened. Matthew 26, as when we read this morning, he said, my soul is exceeding sorrowful, even unto death. They see that in his face. And they realize if something's happening to distress him this much, what's about to happen? What's going to take place? They're confused about what's happening. They don't see, they don't understand, they wonder what is going to take place. Their circumstances were different, but their circumstances were difficult. The Lord had told them, but they hadn't heard it. The Lord had warned them, but they didn't get it. One time in Luke 9:22, the Lord warns them that He's going to have to be rejected, that He's going to have to die. He's trying to prepare them. He's trying to get them ready for what's coming, but they don't get it. He says in Luke 9:22, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected of the elders and chief priests and scribes and be slain and be raised the third day. He told them specifically. He told them directly, I must die. I must face this cross. I must face this death. But I'm going to raise 3 days later. He told them directly. But if you read those verses, they didn't get it. They didn't understand. He told them again in Luke 9:44 and verse 45, let these sayings sink down into your ears. For the Son of Man shall be delivered into the hands of men. But they understood not this saying, and it was hid from them, that they perceived it not, and they feared to ask him of the saying. He told them several times, trouble's coming. Get ready. Expect it. Expect things to change. Expect things to get worse. But they didn't grasp it. And when it started to take place, when it started to come to pass, it confused them. It overwhelmed them. They didn't understand. And in their minds they were thinking, what is happening? Listen, this isn't what we expected. This isn't what we were planning for. God ever done anything in your life that sort of surprised you? Something you didn't expect? Something you weren't expecting? Has God ever let something happen in your life that confused you and you wondered, Lord, why in the world did you let this happen? That's the kind of stress they're going through. That's the kind of distress they're facing. And that's why they were so distressed. That's why they were sleeping for sorrow. The bottom line was they were confused. They just couldn't understand. Lord, why are you letting this happen? God, what is taking place? Lord, have you lost control? Have we been fooled? Were we deceived? We were expecting something different. It overwhelmed them. They were sleeping for sorrow because of their confusion. And they thought, if it's this bad now, if things have gotten so bad this quick, if things have changed this abruptly, if things have gone downhill this fast, what in the world does tomorrow hold? If things, we have been walking with Him and talking with Him, and we've enjoyed the fellowship, and we've seen Him do miracles. We've seen Him touch blinded eyes. We've seen Him meet our needs. He has been there for us, and now He's telling us He's going away, and now we see it in His face. Here in the garden, we see the distress. We see the burden. We see the agony. What in the world is happening? And if it's this bad now, what's going to happen next? They were confused. They didn't understand. Have you ever wondered what in the world is going to happen next? What in the world else can happen? I thought that this morning when I came early to try and pray, and everything was breaking around here, and everything was going backwards, and I thought finally, I don't care if we got any lights, I don't care if there's any heat, I don't care if the copier works or not, I'm going to pray. And I sort of chuckled to myself when I realized all the things that can happen. But I want to tell you something. There's a God we can trust no matter what you're facing. That's what He's going to try and say to them. Why were they sleeping for sorrow? What was it that was overwhelming them? What had brought them to the place to where they were so overwhelmed so exhausted, so grief-stricken, so pulled apart that it wore them down to where literally they fell asleep. It tore them down, wore them down. What was it? They were confused, and they didn't know what's going to happen next. And friends, so many times we wonder what's going to happen next. Could I just throw something in here? Most of the things we worry about of what could happen or might happen or may happen never happen. And it didn't do us one bit of good to worry about what might happen, because when it came to that time when it might have happened, it didn't happen. And if it did happen, worrying didn't help anything anyway. Worrying didn't change anything. That's one thing my mama did well, was worry. She was one of the best worriers I ever knew. Now she's in heaven wondering why she worried. And one of these days you'll be there and you'll be wondering too. They were confused. They said, I just don't understand. Why did you let this happen? What is going on? They were confused, but look in verse 46. And he said unto them, why sleep ye? He didn't let them off the hook. He didn't come up and say, you poor little fellas, I understand, even though he did understand. Now, you've had a rough life. There's been a lot going on that you can't explain or understand. You've been good little disciples, and it's been kind of tough on you now. I understand. You just go on and sleep. It's all right. I understand. Oh, no. He said, why are you asleep? Not only were they confused, could I say number two, they were confronted. He confronted them with this question, why sleep ye? What are you doing asleep? You know what that's saying? There's no excuse. I know life can be overwhelming. I know difficulties pile on top of difficulties. I know questions go unanswered. I know burdens are there to get you down every day of your life. But according to what we find in that scripture, we are not excused to drift off, to let it overwhelm us, to let it overcome us. They were confused, but they were confronted. He said, rise. He says, in essence, it's not right for you to let your thoughts control you. It is not right for you to let all that's happening to overwhelm you to so much to where you exhaust yourself and drift off. He said, arise, wake up. Why are you sleeping? Sure, what they were wrestling with was real. What they were going through was genuine trouble. Sure, it was real. Sure, it was genuine. Yes, it was difficult. And the things you face every day are real. Every day you face genuine problems and conflicts from the devil and the flesh and the world, and you have questions and you have burdens and you have overwhelming problems and difficulties. But according to what we find there, we still are not excused to just forget it and drift off. He says, arise. Why are you sleeping? He in essence says, get up. You know what he's saying? Don't let the circumstances get to you. Don't let what you see. Don't let what you hear. Don't let what you're thinking. Don't let what you're going through get the best of you. Don't let circumstances control you. Get up. Wake up. He doesn't excuse them. He's telling them what you need to do is stand in spite of what's going on. What you need to do is stand in spite of what you're facing. And could I just say it very bluntly? If they aren't excused with all they were going through, certainly we aren't. There's no excuse. There's no reason. There's no excuse we can offer the Lord to just forget, to just give up, to quit, to just close our eyes and pretend it's not the way that it is. We are, as they said, as he said, arise, we're to wake up. If he doesn't excuse them, he doesn't excuse us. It's not time to go to sleep and fail God. It's not time to doze off and forget where we're at and who we are. It's time to awake and to arise. They were confused. They were confronted. Look in verse 47. And while he yet spake, behold, a multitude, and he that was called Judas, one of the 12, went before them and drew nigh unto Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said unto him, Judas, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss? When they which were about him saw what would follow, they said unto him, Lord, shall we smite with a sword? And one of them smote the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. And Jesus answered and said, Suffer ye thus far. And he touched his ear and healed him. Then Jesus said unto the chief priests and captains of the temple and the elders which were come to him, Be it come out as against a thief with swords and staves? When I was with you daily in the temple, you stretched forth no hands against me. But this is your hour and the power of darkness. Then took they him and led him and brought him into the high priest's house, and Peter followed afar off. What we're not told in these verses is the fact that they forsook him and fled. Peter followed afar off, ends up denying the Lord. John's the only one that was still faithful and followed. But my point is this. Jesus was trying to warn them. He's trying to prepare them. He's trying to get them ready. And he's saying, the time's coming. Things are going to get worse. Get ready, prepare, be expectant. Be ready for them when they come to where you won't be overwhelmed. But they didn't. They didn't listen. They didn't watch. They didn't pray. In fact, they let circumstances put them to sleep. So not only were they confused and they were confronted, but could I say number 3, they were conquered. I mean by that, they were conquered by the enemy. Conquer means to be defeated. Mark 14:50 says, and they all forsook him and fled. Analyze the situation. Jesus said, arise. Get up. It's not time to sleep. Arise, watch, and pray that you fall not or enter not into temptation. But they didn't. And they failed. And they were conquered. And they were defeated. And the reason they were defeated was because they had not stayed awake. They went to sleep at the moment they needed to be alert. They missed it. They failed. And they were defeated. And the reason they were asleep, the reason they were defeated was because they were asleep. And the reason they were asleep was because they were overwhelmed with circumstances. They let what was happening overwhelm them. They let their circumstances control them. And they were defeated as a result. Now with the Lord sent an angel to assist them. Look in verse 43 and you'll find that. And there appeared an angel unto him from heaven, strengthening him. The Lord received help during the Garden of Gethsemane experience. And the same help he got was available to them. But they missed it. They missed it. And they were overcome. They were conquered. They were defeated. I close with a few remarks. Jesus is trying to warn these disciples. He's been trying to warn them for days. Something's coming. He described that something specifically. I will be delivered into the hands of the scribes and Pharisees. They will reject me. They will crucify me. I will be dead. He told them directly. He told them specifically. He told them, you get ready for this. Prepare for this. It's coming. Things are going to get worse. Get ready. But they didn't. And when the time came that they needed to stand, they were asleep because they let their circumstances overwhelm them. And they were defeated as a result. But what he says is, don't go to sleep. Wake up if you're asleep. And he said, rise. To rise means to stand up. Get out of the place you're in. It means to arise, to stand. You know what he's saying? Do something. Don't stay where you're at. If your problem tonight is despair, if your problem tonight is temptation, if your problem tonight is pride, if your problem tonight is circumstances, if your problem tonight is people, whatever it is that's burdening you, don't stay in that trap. Don't stay in that rut. He said, arise. Stand up. Don't stay where you're at. Don't give in to your emotions. Don't give in to your sorrow. Don't give in to your defeat. Don't give in to what you face. Don't give in to your circumstances. He says, arise. Wake up. Get up. Don't stay where you're at. He said, rise and pray. It's sad, but it's so. We have gotten to the point to where when we think, pray, has it gotten to that point to where that's all we can do? Has it gotten so bad that all we can do now is pray? Do you understand the power of prayer? Do you understand what prayer can do? Do you have any idea if you'd get right in this area of prayer and devote yourself to being a prayer warrior and really spend time in prayer, do you have any idea the difference that God would make? We think, well, that's just what we say when we don't know what else to say. That's what the preacher says when he doesn't have anything else to tell you. Oh, friend, there's a power in prayer. If there wasn't power, why did he tell us to pray? Why did he tell them to pray? Friends, I want to tell you, what we need in this church, I'll say it again, more than anything else, is for this group right here to get right in the area of prayer and really pray like we should. I am convinced we would be amazed at the difference in our personal life, in our life for the Lord, in our church. And friend, I want to tell you, he said, rise. Realize you can't stay where you're at. If you stay there, things aren't going to get better. If you stay there, things will only get worse. Rise up. Don't stay where you're at. Don't give in to it. Don't think that it's hopeless. Don't think there's no chance. Don't think there's no need. Get up. Get out of it. And then pray. But then notice what he says. Lest you enter into temptation. I believe we'll summarize that by saying, watch. Be alert. Be aware. Just a few minutes ago, I asked the Lord again, Lord, please open my eyes. If there's something I'm missing about myself, if there's something I'm missing about my preaching, if there's something I'm missing about this church, if there's something I'm missing about how I understand the Bible, if there's something I'm missing about you, Lord, if there's something that I'm in the dark about, Lord, please open my eyes. He said, don't let temptation get the best of you. Watch out. Be alert. Get your eyes open. Don't let the devil distract you. Don't let the devil defeat you. Don't let him trip you up. Oh, how we need to say, Lord, please help me watch. Help me to be alert. Show me what I need to see. They were sleeping for sorrow. The circumstances of life that they just didn't want. God was letting something come in their life that they didn't want. It wasn't how they wanted. It wasn't what they signed up for. It wasn't what they expected. And because of those circumstances, they were so overwhelmed, so beaten down, so exhausted, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, when they got a chance to where they were quiet, even though within a few feet Christ was agonizing. I'm convinced they probably heard the first few words of him praying. I'm sure that's one thing that alarmed them even more. Why is he such in such agony? Before they drifted off, they probably heard him praying in agony. And yet they drifted off anyway. Because of circumstances, they were beaten down. And the Lord says, don't stay there. You don't have to stay there. There's help. There's an answer. Rise up. Determined with God's help, I will not stay here. I am tired of this. I am tired of the burden. I am tired of the trap. I am tired of where I'm at. I am not going to just stay here. Arise. And then pray. Talk to God. Tell Him. Ask Him. Speak to Him directly. Oh. And then be watching for the devil. Be alert. Life got you down. Life wearing you out. You look around and think, it's just not what I expected. It's just not what I'm wanting. Could have just make it a little worse. I'm sorry. But the Lord put this on my heart. The Lord was warning them, it's going to get worse. There's not a thing you can do about it. I'm going to Calvary. They don't like me, and they're not going to like you. It's going to get worse. Now, you do one of two things. You forget it and let them destroy you. You let them overcome you. You get defeated, or you stand and be true. Here it comes, folks. It's going to get worse for us. There's no telling what we'll see before He comes to get us. I hope I don't see another tick on the clock. But we may see some devastating things before we leave this world. And there's grace to help us no matter how bad it gets. I told them before church, I used to sleep in ditches and alleys and abandoned houses for the devil. Didn't think a thing about it. If it comes to the point to where I have to do that for the Lord, it'll be all right. It'll be okay. I don't expect it. Don't get afraid that much. But I don't know what's ahead. But I do know this. The God who saved us, that's going to take us home, is going to take us all the way. We're not alone. But friend, I want to ask you, life overwhelming you, problems getting you, something happened you don't understand, I want to tell you, there's help to be had. Let's stand together. Maybe there's somebody here tonight just needing some help. Maybe there's somebody here tonight that just say, Lord, boy, I'm almost asleep for sorrow. I'm almost overwhelmed. Maybe there's somebody who just needs to realize this evening just how much you need the Lord. Maybe there's somebody here who has some questions you haven't got answered. I don't promise the answer, but I know somebody that will help you through it. Whatever needs you have, maybe there's somebody here lost. I beg you, please come and get it settled. You know if the Lord's speaking to you, no matter what the need, if you're listening, so please give Him right away in your life and come if you need to. Father, please speak to hearts. I ask you to help some folks tonight. I ask you, Lord, to relieve some burdens. I ask you, Lord, to increase some people's faith. I ask you, Lord, to stir some people, awake some people, help some people to arise tonight. Lord, I ask you for grace for what's ahead. Give us faith to trust you no matter what tomorrow holds.